Friends, I'm Rob Sparks, Associate Pastor for Care here at First Presbyterian. And before I call us to this virtual service of worship and remembrance, on behalf of the faith family at First Presbyterian, I'd like to offer a word of welcome to the friends and extended family of Sara Cadenhead. For tuning in wherever and whenever you are, we are grateful that you could be a part of this. But I also would just ask a favor. Would you please keep Sara's family in prayer, especially Paul, Steve and his wife, Melanie, David, and Paul and Sara's grandchildren, Alexandra, Amanda, and Hannah. I'd also like to offer a word of thanksgiving and welcome to Reverend Chris Moore-Kish, whose official title is chaplain at Presbyterian Village in Austell, but Chris is really more of a pastor to that community there. It's where Paul and Sara have lived for the last decade. And welcome, too, to Sam Hagan, an incomparable musician who has a deep and abiding relationship with the Cadenheads, and as well as with First Presbyterian. He became a tenor here in 1970, and probably one of the biggest champions for Sam was Paul, because he was on session at that time and made it a possibility. And they cemented a friendship and a relationship that he and Sara had with Sam for all these years. I'd also like to thank Judy Boehm, who is his accompanist today. Thank you both for being here. Before we begin, Paul wanted me to tell you a little bit about the musical selections, some of which are not typical for memorial services. This first song, His Eye is on the Sparrow, always appealed to Sara. She said that she just knew when she heard the verses that someone was always with you. You always were in the presence of God. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know, he watches over me.
Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Let not your heart be troubled. His tender words I hear, and resting on his goodness, I lose my doubts and fears. Though by the path he leadeth, but one step I may see, his eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. His eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Whenever I am tempted, whenever clouds arise, when songs give place to sighing, when hope within me dies, I draw the closer to him. From care he sets me free. His eyes on the sparrow, he cares for me. His eyes on the sparrow, and I know he cares for me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
Sara, who always called Paul by his Spanish name, Pablo, said a number of years back, "Pablo, wouldn't the world be a better place if people would do Scripture rather than just reading Scripture?" And Paul and Sara mused together about Sara's insights, and then she remarked, "What faith requires matters, and what it requires is to do the right thing." With these words of Sara's echoing in our ears, hear these words from the prophet Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. "O mortal, what is good? And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God?"
Paul shared with me that when Sara was 13 years old, her beloved grandfather died. She had a really special relationship with that man. But in the little country church where his funeral took place, they sang, "It is well with my soul." And she went home and told her mother that when her funeral came, that she wanted it to be sung then. The New Testament verse from Romans is one that gave Paul courage when he was training for the Second World War at Fort Benning in Georgia. Sara gave him a pocket New Testament. It had been given to her by her pastor when she went off to college. She didn't give it to him. She lent it to him. She intended for him to return it to her when she got back from the service. And he said that it was with him. It accompanied him right in his vest pocket as he jumped out of perfectly good airplanes 13 times. And Paul said when he would jump, he would sing to himself the old hymn, "Stand up for Jesus." Stand up for Jesus, stand in his strength alone. Hear now these words from the Apostle Paul. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. Our next song, "I'll Be Loving You Always," was sung at Paul and Sarah's wedding. Paul said he told Sarah that this day will always be remembered because you never escape my love for you.
I'll be loving you always with a love that's true always. When the things you've planned need a helping hand, I will understand always, always. Days may not be fair always, that's when I'll be there always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always.
Friends, colleagues, members of First Presbyterian Church, and friends across the country and around the world. I am Paul Cadenhead, husband of Sara Davenport Cadenhead, a true believer in all that has been, all that is, and all that will be. One of the links in that long time ago and into the eternal future is the friendship one enjoys and the music one enjoys. The Moldau of Smetana was one of Sara's favorites, and she was able to accompany the choir of this church when we sang in Prague at his first Christmas from under the Iron Curtain. That was a spiritual experience, particularly because of the Moldau. We have a friend who cannot listen to it without crying. She and Sara used to join their friendship through the music. Sara was chair of the music committee of this church when we sang at that first Christmas from under the Iron Curtain. So the Moldau is closely connected with us, this church, and with friends, showing that the circle of friendship never ends. Just last week, that friend called me. We had not talked to her for years. She was one of the first friends we had in Atlanta. And she and Sara used to sit and listen and ever bond by listening to this music. That is a part of true friendship expressed in beautiful music, and that is why Sara wished this played at her memorial service. Thank you. I am Paul Cadenhead again, the 75-year husband of Sara Davenport Cadenhead. 75 years of short time compared to timeless time called eternity. Sara's goal in this life was short but beautiful: to make a difference to all eternity, that I do the right thing today, not for the year, not for tomorrow, but for eternity. That's a deep, deep subject, but she lived up to it. And I am the chief beneficiary of that goal of hers. The goal shifted as she marched through time. The first one was when she married me 75 years ago. Her goal shifted, or was modified to fit into eternity. It became to be the best helpmate possible for my beloved husband. She did that in flying colors. When we had children, it was modified to be the best mother possible for our beloved sons. When she served in the church, and she did that beautifully in many, many areas, chair of the music committee, as I've said, caring for those who could not care for themselves, delivering meals to Meals on Wheels, serving as deacon and elder, and without knowing a note of music, she became chair of the music committee here. It expressed their love for her in a moving way. One Christmas Eve, while our son was in college, we came to the midnight service here, where I had sung in this choir for, I guess, 20 to 25 years or more. We sort of were peeved at our youngest son when, after the service, we went home and wanted to be with him. He was home for college. He didn't come home. He didn't come home. So we left it. Unbeknownst to us, he and the professional quartet of this church had stayed down after midnight playing and singing the beloved music. You have heard some of it. That's why this unusual service. And the first thing she heard Christmas morning was through some connection that our son, who's working on this service, did. He connected it up, and we turned on the light, in a loud voice, "Merry Christmas, Sara," from the professional quartet of this church. We have been members here now since right after World War II. And we joined in 52, I think. And we have served, and the church has served us ever since. Harking back to her goal to do the right thing today, she engaged in every activity available to her. Now, it is necessary to note that which most of you do not know. Sara was a girl of the cotton field, of the cornfield. Her hands bore blisters and corns from cotton chopping. in the spring, and her back, the pain of a croaker sack across her shoulder, picking cotton, sticking it in there, to be taken by a mule-drawn wagon to be ginned for cash to support. She was the Scarlet of O'Hara, but without slaves. She did what slaves would have done. That was Sara. Whatever was required. She wanted very badly to go to college. She couldn't. It would take too long to explain how she finally got there, funded her own in an environment where it was not necessary to educate women, because all they needed to do was to have a family. That turned into something rather attractive. One day my secretary came into the office from the shifting environment of where we are now. It is true, a woman's place is in the House, but also the Senate and also the White House. And now, from those days, you see where we are. So Sara's life has gone through field work to colorful, beautiful music, to governmental change. That has been her link in eternity, and she is tied to it. And I am the chief beneficiary of that. And I now say that my life is bookends. When I found Sara, when Sara departed me, both were in love. The early love was, and this was the day before her death, she repeated it in a very silent voice, "I love you, Pablo." Pablo was my Spanish name when we first, not real name, but we were taking Spanish, and Pablo is for Paul. So that tied it to the beginning, "I love you, Paul." And in silence, after a minute or so, the last word she said to me, "I love you, Paul." To me, that was a metaphor. I loved you in the beginning. I love you at the end. I live within those bookends. When she began her love, and it lasted until the end, in silence. I have studied memory, I have studied spirit, I have studied physical sense. Sara met all standards. She loved me in spirit. She loved me in physical life. The spirit was before our time. The spirit is after our time. It is our link in eternity to do the right thing today. And that has been my life. I have written extensively on this. I tried to condense this down to time allotted me in this service. I could not do it. So I'm simply saying it was found in these steps along the way. When I opened my first law office, and I'm going to put a little humor in it because it would make it memorable, and it's true. It was in a file room of a practicing lawyer who charged me no rent if I would do his legwork. That's how I started my practice. I later became this lawyer's partner. And I moved into another office. And I said I knew I had arrived when I got an office with a window and a seat that did not flush. So that is where we began, and we went through to a very successful career. But in it, Sara climbed from the cotton field into a very, very high level. On our 50th anniversary, she received a personal letter from the governor of Georgia, remembering a specific conversation he had with her at the governor's mansion in working on the environment. He commended her for her work in environmental work, the spirit of all of us. At her death, I received a personal letter from a former president of the United States where, remembering the 2 times we met with personally, it was with Sara and me, when we wanted to attend his teaching of the Sunday school class. We did. And he recognized us in the audience and asked, would we were attending church, would we like to attend with him? We did, and had our picture made. Another time, Sara's brother, who had worked with him on a habitat nailing, he said he knew the president had no knowledge of him, but he became impressed with the president, wanted to visit Plains. I took him down there, and I was advised that you're not supposed to tell when the president's in town, just to anybody who's coming in. But she said, I know you know him. So he's going to be here for a hamburger downstairs in about 5 minutes. So I waited and went down, and we had a little chat. And I told him about Sara's brother, who was so fond of him. He said, is he here? Yes. Well, wait, hold my order. Get them and we'll all have a hamburger together. So we did, and we got a picture of Sara's brother and his wife and my brother, and the president was in blue jeans. He had been working. So I'm saying she had risen to a high place so that her death was remembered by the president. That is all within the bookends of Sara's love for everybody, everything, going back to a dog, stray dog. It showed up at the house. She was told not to feed it, because if you do, he will come back. If you don't, he will go on. She fed it. That dog became her best friend. Many years later, or several years later, when we went up to get our groceries from the fields where she had worked, and the milk from the cows down in the barn, I left the door open on our old 38 Chevrolet, and there was Gyp, named for Gypsy, because he had no connection. He was just wandering. He was in the seat where Sara sat. He would not come out. I tried to coax him, he would not. Sara did, he would not. He had never disobeyed Sara. But that dog was going where Sara went. He did not know where it was, but he was going where Sara went. I lifted him out, Sara crying, the happy-tailed dog, not wagging, but sagging. Sara cried all the way back to Atlanta. I saw a demonstration of her love on animals, feeling the effects of her love with me, and knowing of her love with the children she had taught in this church, and how she had affected the governor of the state of Georgia and the president of the United States. I said, there is a fullness in the life of this lady, and I am the beneficiary of that fullness. Therefore, my relationship with dear Sara is the bookends to my life. I owe it to her and her love beyond any measure by which we could measure it. That is the depth, the width, and the height of love to do what is right today. She was a model mother, she was a model wife, she was a model church member, she was a model worker in the environment. She was a model. Princess is the name, for Sarah and Princess mean the same name. The princess married May. She has risen to queen. She will be reigning queen in my life in spirit, as she was my life in the physical world. And my cremains will be placed in the same urn with her cremains, with the inscription that we wrote. And it's now in that special designed urn by her great niece, named for her, and it's this: here, Sara and Paul, in eternal embrace, as in life, they were in loving embrace. So our loving embrace goes to a spiritual embrace, and our span in space becomes, I hope, and I hope we practice, it makes a difference to all eternity that I do the right thing today. Sara, dear, goodbye physically, welcome to eternity in spirit.
Our next song is I'll Be Seeing You. Sara told Paul, Pablo, you and I have been in so many places together, but the one I'll always remember will be the Sunday afternoons spent at West Georgia College, where they would sit on a porch together, or sometimes they would go to the music room. Paul had been a watchman when he was in school and had a key, and so they would go there together and play beloved songs on the records.
Cathedral bells were tolling, and our hearts sang on. Was it the spell of Paris or the April dawn? Who knows if we shall meet again? But when the morning chimes ring sweet again, I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, the wishing well, I'll be seeing you in every summer's day, in everything that's bright and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
To Paul, the Cadenhead family, and those of you who have gathered with us today, I want to share with you a story that I heard about the famed British author C.S. Lewis. During the last months of his life, his close friend and fellow writer Sheldon Van Auken visited him, and Van Auken recounted, "On the last day I met Lewis, we sat together at the East Gate pub for lunch. We talked about death, or rather, awakening after death. Whatever would it be like, we thought. Why, of course, it's like this." Lewis gestured at the bustling lunchtime crowd. How else could it possibly be? We both chuckled, and I said it would be a sort of homecoming, and he agreed. Lewis said that he hoped my wife and I would be back and visit England again soon, but we mustn't get out of touch. At all events, he said with a cheerful grin, we'll certainly meet again, here or there. He gestured with his finger toward heaven. When it was time to go, we drained our pints. We emerged on the busy high street with traffic streaking by. We shook hands, and he said, "I shan't say goodbye. We'll meet again." Then he plunged into the traffic. I stood there watching him. When he reached the sidewalk on the other side of the street, he turned again as though he knew somehow that I would still be there standing in front of the Eastgate pub. Then he raised his voice in a great roar that easily overcame the noise of the cars and buses. "Besides," he bellowed with a great grin, "Christians never say goodbye. We Christians say, 'I'll see you later.'" Paul, we Christians never say goodbye. We say, "I'll see you later." And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit rest and abide with you, Sara, and all you love and all who love you this day and forevermore. Amen.
Hello, I am Emily Hester Archer, daughter of Ralph and Carolyn Hester, and Sara Cadenhead is my beloved Aunt Sara. Our families lived next door to each other on Wilmot Drive for 14 years, the heart of my childhood. Stephen and David Cadenhead were less like cousins and more like brothers to Mark and me. Uncle Paul was a second dad, and Aunt Sara simply my mother next door. As our lives and addresses changed over the years, that profound sense of place in each other's lives did not. That sense of belonging that comes with the strength of love in families. And along with all of that, the stories and memories. Here are two poems, one written 25 years ago for Aunt Sara on the occasion of her 70th birthday. And the second poem is dedicated to both of my mothers for Mother's Day this past year, a week after Aunt Sara's passing. Next Door for Aunt Sara, April 1995. Next door, there should be an Airstream gleaming under a Georgia June sky, and little boys slamming screen doors. Next door should be a roast chicken just beginning to twine its aroma with the turnip greens on my mother's stove. Next door should be a swing set and Frosty the Cat and little boys playing jungle in the ravine. Next door there should be a hot iron sending up steam signals. Here we are. It is not easy, but here we are. Next door should be little boys practicing piano, making tiny, dangerous fires with their junior chemistry set, swinging from a vine their daddy chopped loose over the creek. Next door should be a woman who would feed me if my mother lay too dizzy in bed, who would have blue eyes, soft cheeks, strong legs, and who would feed my mother too. Next door should be a woman who would let me in when I was running away. Next door was as far as I needed to go. For all I knew, heaven listened to her and the rest of us on a regular basis. And for all heaven knew, next door should make earth complete. Mother's Day. For Carolyn Davenport Hester and Sara Davenport Cadenhead. There you are, together again, where the tender light of a late afternoon that seems like Georgia shines from heaven's kitchen door, left ajar just enough to turn us toward the sweet clatter of sisters making soup and cornbread. Oh, bright mothers, how I miss the earth you made complete. But that's not forever, because you're both just next door, and next door is as far as I ever need to go.
Greetings to all who are watching the celebration of the life of Sara, one that we all loved and whose passing saddens us, but one that is celebrated in heaven above. My name is Mark Hester, son of the late Ralph and Carolyn Davenport Hester, and nephew of Sara. I'd like to preface the thank you note that I am writing to Aunt Sara and explain the title. Some of you may not know that my family and the Cadenheads lived immediately next door to one another for the first 10 years of my life before they moved to Riverside Drive and we moved to Norcross, Georgia. They were my closest of relatives, and we had some nicknames for one another. I called Steve and David names that should not be repeated. Uncle Paul was called Skunk, and Aunt Sara was always Aunt Sara, but my term of endearment for her was Auntie Roo. She, in turn, would call me Marky. So now I write a thank you note to Auntie Roo. Dear Auntie Roo, I'm sorry the virus prevented me from being present with you in your final days, but now, as you listen, out there somewhere, I wanted to take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude for playing the exemplary role that God gave you in my life. When my mind's eye looks back on my life, whether as a child or as an adult, your face always appears. As my sister Emily has or will allude to, you were always a next-door presence. When David and I caused trouble and wreaked havoc in your house, you deserved to beat us. Thank you for showing us mercy. Even after we all moved apart and you were still there, only 20 minutes away, and still offering love, care, nurturing lunches, dinners, always generous and gracious, and again, merciful to us youngins. Thank you. On Sundays at First Presbyterian, you were there, your presence in the pew, in front or beside us, reinforcing the importance of our common faith, Christian fellowship, and family values. Thank you. Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings at the Hester Cadenhead homes are some of my favorite and most indelible memories and reinforce the importance of family. Yours and Mom's labor of love in the preparation of hot vegetable soup and cornbread and with epic Christmas dinner spreads will ne'er be forgotten. Thank you. You're always there for our family and especially for Mom, your dear sister, from whom you are inseparable, whether in holding hands physically or with sisterly hearts entwined. After Mom's passing, you took on a greater role as my second mom. For all of my life, you could gently give me guidance and or correction with your patented glance, succinct words, a wrinkle of your face, or with an approving smile and twinkle of your eye. Thank you. I could write many more words, but just know that you affected my life positively in countless ways. God gifted me by having you as an integral part of my world. Others should be so blessed to have had an aunt like you, Auntie Roo. With love and gratitude, your nephew, Mark.
don't know what Sara expected when she first heard about me, the New York City native who preferred bagels to biscuits. I do know that I was petrified when I first met her. As a shy girl who came from a small family, feeling comfortable in new situations was not my best event. Upon meeting Sara, however, I quickly found that I had nothing to fear because with her signature gentleness and calm, she opened her arms and welcomed me as a part of her family. I admired Sara's patience. While I had to deal with 2 strong-willed Cadenhead men, she had to deal with 3. Over the years, I witnessed her gentle ways and calm demeanor, and appreciated the grace with which she carried herself. Though she appeared shy, the Sara I knew made me laugh with her quick wit and sarcastic asides. There were a few instances when we'd be sitting together as a family, talking about the usual nonsense, Sara in her chair, seemingly not paying attention, and from out of nowhere, she would say something so utterly genius that I would have to make sure the comment had actually come from her. I came to learn that Sara, despite her quiet, was always listening. To be loved by Sara was a gift, and I am so grateful to have been a recipient of that affection. My parents loved her too. My dad admired the unassuming way she had about her. My mother appreciated the ease of their relationship and the kindness Sara always bestowed upon her. When my parents were ill, Sara was incredibly kind, checking in on them and on me, never pushing, but always letting us know that she was there and we were in her thoughts. I have come to learn that loss is an ongoing event. It is not defined by any one moment. Loss happens when you least expect it, in a song, in a phrase, in the face of a shared loved one. It is quiet, and yet it is resoundingly loud. It happens in the brightness of day and in the darkness of night. Loss changes us. It leaves an emptiness within us that can't ever be filled. An emptiness that each one of us defines differently. But over time, if we allow it, that hurt and sadness abate, and the initial feeling of being left is replaced with loving memories. I miss you, Sara. May your memory be a blessing.
Granddaddy always had a certain understanding of our grandmother that no one else really quite got. You could tell they shared the same soul, and it was one of the most beautiful things I was ever privileged to bear witness to. He recently told me of one of his fondest memories with her, in which she would request to watch where the red fern grows, constantly. It warmed my heart to see the light that illuminated from his eyes as he spoke of the thought. You could hear his love and grief in his tone, almost as if he was saying, I don't know how I'll ever pay you back for what you've done, but I'll never forget it. Just as a little boy spoke of his dogs. He buried part of his life along with old Dan, just as Granddaddy did with her, just as we all did. But just as the red fern grew on the 2 mounds, bringing life from death, Grandmother's memory has brought new life and light to each of us. She certainly has for me. A beautiful woman uses her lips for truth, her voice for kindness, her ears for compassion, her hands for charity, and her heart for love. And my grandmother couldn't have been a better representation of just that.
I'm Phil Blackwell, a nephew of Aunt Sarah's. May the 2nd, 2020 was a sad day for all of us because that's the day that Aunt Sarah passed from life here on earth and went to heaven. It's an especially sad day for Uncle Paul because it was the end of 75 years of unsurpassed love that he and Aunt Sarah shared here on earth. It's a sad day for me because 1 year to the day, May 2nd, 2019, my mother, who was Aunt Sarah's oldest sister, Dot, also passed from life here and went to heaven. But I'm reminded of something my sister-in-law Trish said to me about her mother's death. She said, "Mom died. I still miss her every day. There's the poignant wishing that I could share things with her, get her opinion, and check memories of family happenings. Weighted against the happiness of knowing that she is not suffering and that she's with God, she's fine. It's those of us left behind who spend time mending." Yes, Aunt Sarah's fine. She's not suffering and she's with God. It's those of us left behind who will be spending time mending, and we can mend better and faster by asking God for His help. Then my thoughts turned to thinking about what a happy day it must have been for Aunt Sarah to go up to heaven and to be greeted by her parents and her brothers and her sisters in the Davenport family, all who had gone on up there before her. That had to be one special reunion.